Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about Roseanne again. She recently posted another tweet complimenting President Donald J. Trump. This time she's praising him for rescuing more and more children from human traffickers. That's right, hundreds of sex trafficking victims have been rescued under new programs in President Trump's administration. Today we're going to talk about that story, Roseanne's tweet, and we're going to go over a couple of the latest episodes of Roseanne's hit show that's not only still doing ridiculously well on ABC, it's also been addressing some slightly related topics, namely kids, parenting, and having babies and getting pregnant. Sure, there's no trafficking on her show, of course not, but they have been talking about children and family stuff there too, so we're going to go over all that today and more in this video. With all that said, let's go ahead and get started then. First, let's look at a story from the Epic Times called Roseanne's tweet about Trump rescuing children from traffickers is based on facts. I like the sound of that. Let's read on. Sitcom star Roseanne Barr, that rhymes, nice, was derided as a conspiracy theorist by the national media after she tweeted about President Donald Trump freeing hundreds of children from trafficking rings around the world. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and more than a dozen other news outlets all ran with the same angle, linking Barr's tweet to a series of cryptic posts by a group calling themselves Q. Barr did not mention Q in her tweet. Sounds like the lamestream media is really trying to keep this story away from Americans. Not only are they not reporting on the human trafficking victims Trump has helped save, they're also branding people who do talk about it as conspiracy theorists. What a joke. I knew the media was biased, but goddamn, refusing to acknowledge that kids have been saved here is a new low. Let's go ahead and continue though. These media outlets' choice of angle is particularly odd, considering that the White House posted a report about Trump's ongoing battle against human trafficking 2 weeks prior to Barr's March 31st tweet. No major news outlet mentioned the details on trafficking that the White House provided. The White House report showed that 518 victims of human trafficking were rescued, and 1,602 human trafficking suspects were arrested in 2017 by a dedicated unit at the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. During that same time, a government-funded human trafficking hotline received reports leading to the identification of over 21,000 victims. That's pretty damn huge. Over 21,000 victims identified, and not a peep from the New York Times, CNN, or Washington Post. We're hearing nothing from them about it. Instead, they've been dedicating hour after hour to their own actual conspiracy theory, Russian collusion, which they of course have no proof or evidence for. Russia is a nothing burger, but they just won't stop talking about that. That and they've been trying to shame Trump for having sex with a hot porn star 10 years ago, something they might think is shameful, while most of the people I've talked to about it think it's pretty badass. Having sex with a porn star only makes Trump look cooler, if anything. Reading on, President Trump has freed so many children held in bondage to pimps all over this world, hundreds each month. Barr wrote in the tweet that started the media onslaught. He has broken up trafficking rings in high places everywhere. Notice that. I disagree on some things, but give him benefit of the doubt for now. Well put, Rosie. And in case you guys were wondering if we should even be attributing this increase in rescues to Trump, well, this is a founded claim. In February last year, Trump signed an executive order titled Enforcing Federal Law with Respect to Transnational Criminal Organizations and Preventing International Trafficking. In the order, Trump directed the government to identify, interdict, disrupt, and dismantle the transnational criminal organizations that engage in human trafficking. There have been more arrests under Trump because he's the law and order president. It's as simple as that. And this is very much like how he's encouraging more enforcement of the law at the US border and with immigration. So too is Trump enforcing the laws around the illegal and disgusting act of trafficking children. Roseanne was right to commend the president for this. He doesn't need a pat in the back or anything, but the people should know that children are protected under the current administration. Law and order has finally returned to America. No, not that Law & Order. That show's never left us, unfortunately. But one show that did leave us and thankfully came back was, of course, Roseanne. We covered the first 2 episodes pretty thoroughly here, but I've been hesitant to go over episodes 3 and 4 since there really wasn't that much politics involved in them, or topical references either. A few, but it didn't warrant a full review. But now that we are talking about Roseanne again anyway, and we have a relevant topic with Trump saving more children than ever, children and families being a big topic on the show as well, so I figure we might as well take the time and dive back into Roseanne. We're going to breeze through the next 2 episodes a little faster though, since this is a twofer. So without further ado, buckle up, Buttercup. This is going to be a hell of a ride.
You want me to yell at her for doing laundry? Are you worried she's going to do the windows next? Cut her some slack, okay?
Kids don't need slack, they need boundaries. The happiest kids are raised in cages. And it keeps the meat tender.
So the majority of episode 3 deals with Roseanne and Darlene arguing over how to raise children. Harris, the granddaughter, has been acting up quite a bit lately, and Roseanne is getting fed up with it. Harris leaves clothes, dishes, and trash everywhere in the house. She also hogs the laundry room and is just rude in general to Roseanne and Dan, the two who own the house she's living in, by the way. So basically, Harris keeps acting up and Roseanne tries to teach her what to do right. But when that fails, Roseanne turns to Darlene, Harris's actual mother, who's the one who should be raising her properly to begin with. The way I see this episode is Darlene is basically a modern millennial parent. She may be a little bit older than a millennial, but I think you know what I mean. Darlene is a modern, liberal, hands-off type parent who basically lets her kids do whatever they want, which turns them into brats that walk all over her, by the way. And this is no way to raise kids to be productive members of society, and Roseanne seems to think that way too. Her and Dan have a much more traditional, conservative parenting style that you can respect. They aren't total assholes, but they are stricter and provide more stern boundaries for their kids to follow when needed. Now, I'm not saying you need to raise your kids like they're soldiers, but a little stability and discipline goes a long way.
A little trust here, Darlene.
Did she just call you Darlene?
Yeah, I have no problem with it.
It's very modern. It allows the parent and the child to address each other as equals.
Thanks, Jackie.
Please call me Aunt Jackie is the only title that I have.
Here we see even more examples of Darlene and her so-called modern parenting. She even lets her kids call her by the first name. Now this I don't really have a problem with, but I know I wouldn't want my kids to do that. And it's also an emblematic sign of a bigger issue. Modern millennial parents try too hard to be on the same level with their kids. They want to be the cool, hip, modern, progressive parents. And, of course, liberal too. When instead, they really should be more adult, parent-like figures. It's better to be a good, mean, stern parent that raises a good kid than to be a best friend parent who raises a little monster.
And you let her play you like a chump.
You know, this is going to come as a shock to you people, but I actually trust my kids.
Here's why you can't trust your kids. 'Cause they're stupid.
She ain't wrong. No siree. Kids are very stupid. Even when they get to be teenagers and they seem smart, kids will still end up doing dumb shit. Keeping a close eye on them is very important. Sure, more freedom is nice too, and be as trusting as you can, but also be as careful as possible.
You know, we all want to believe the best in people, but the truth is kids lie, people cheat, and you don't want to be the one that gets eaten by the bear.
Wow, is that one of your poems? Because I'm starting to get why your dad hit you with a broom.
By the end of the episode, Darlene learns her lesson about parenting. It's a tough, hard, never-ending job raising kids. If you let your guard down for 1 second, then they end up like Darlene, catching their kids stealing clothes from the mall. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go nuclear and beat your kids or something, like Dan said his older dad and third generation used to do. No, we don't need to go back to the 1950s, but going back to 80s or 90s parenting isn't the worst idea in the world. I grew up at that time, and I think my parents and third generation had things about perfect. They weren't as strict as their parents, who would still smack and spank their kids, but they also weren't as lenient as modern parents, who basically let their kids do whatever they want. No, we don't want free-range children either. It's somewhere right in the middle. That's the sweet spot. 1996, let's say. Next, let's jump over to episode 4 of this season, which backtracks from the discussion of raising kids all the way back to the idea of having them in the first place. Roseanne's other daughter, Becky, has been talking about being a surrogate mother lately in order to try and make money. So this episode of Roseanne focuses on that story more.
You know how I feel about this.
I'm a little nervous. I was hoping you might wish me luck.
You're gonna need it. Connor babies have huge heads. You had an uncle who never even got out.
So Roseanne is still showing a lot of resistance to the surrogate mother idea Becky has, which in my opinion is another modern, almost liberal cause one of her kids is taking up. The idea of giving away a baby for money is pretty progressive and modern, you must admit, and a conservative old-timer like Roseanne just can't cope with the idea of giving away a baby from her daughter, a potential grandkid in her mind. And I have to say, I still feel the same way too. Having a surrogate child shouldn't be taken lightly, and it should only be done in the most extreme circumstances, which I don't believe Becky quite qualifies for.
I'm happy that you're not giving a baby away, if that's what you mean, but
And then you're
that's
going to tell
not
me
what
how wrong I was and how I lied and it blew up in my face. I'm getting punished enough, Mother.
Well, it looks like Becky's plan didn't work out anyway. She had lied about her age, saying she was in her 30s instead of the actual 40s, in order to get the opportunity to sell rental space in her uterus better. Well, this lie came back to bite her at the doctor's office, when the doctor reported that Becky had a very low chance of getting pregnant at all, which is pretty standard for older women like herself. And while this delights Roseanne since now they won't have to give away a grandkid, well, this also devastates Becky. She's not only missing out on the money she was hoping for, she's also a little depressed since she can't have kids anymore, potentially. Becky's Becky's just coping with getting older, much like the rest of the Connor family. In the end, Becky goes to the bar to drink away her sorrows, while Roseanne begins to feel bad for her, even going so far as to get back the pet dog Becky returned from the beginning of the episode. Things get a little emotional at the conclusion here, I have to say, but this is to be expected when talking about the possibility of bringing a new life into the world, a new member of the family. Kids are a serious decision, and I guess it took this visit to the doctor's office to wake Becky up to that. Unfortunately though, it may just be too late for her to have kids at this point. Wow, that's a lot of serious talk about kids, trafficking, parenting, and getting pregnant today. I think we've covered the full gamut of emotions here too. What do you guys think about the Roseanne stories we talked about? Was she right to commend Trump for saving more and more kids from trafficking? And how fucked up is it that CNN and the media are attacking her for saying that, and they're not reporting on the initial story? And what did you think about episodes 3 and 4 of the Roseanne show? What are your thoughts about modern parenting versus the more traditional style? And what do you think about having surrogate kids for someone for money? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. See y'all next time.